Welcome to another episode of My Weird Prompts, an AI-generated podcast featuring the random prompts of Daniel Rosehill as answered by a revolving cast of friendly AI characters. Join us for deep dives into AI, technology, and whatever other random thing Daniel finds fascinating today. Subscribe on Spotify or your favorite podcatcher. Now, today's episode.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
Hey, Herman and Corin. So I'd like to return today to the not very glamorous or beautiful topic of mold remediation. That's probably the only suitable way that I can introduce it, because it's not really something any of us want to be thinking about too much. But we've talked in previous episodes about the issue of molds in properties, and I mentioned my leak saga that began last year, 2025, and we had a number of weeks of this basically roof leak that our landlord didn't do anything about. It just kind of spread. Got basically, I remember there was mold growing on the column that I'm looking at next to the bed. I mentioned that I'm asthmatic, and for a number of weeks we had to sleep on the couch and then take up residence in a relative's place. And I also mentioned that I tried to get back to the room a couple of times after they finally fixed the leak, and kept having asthma exacerbations. The news is that I successfully returned to the bedroom, which after weeks of sleeping on a couch, I can't even tell you how luxurious it feels to wake up in a bed for the second day in a row. So I'm back in the bedroom, and I'm back without asthma exacerbations. My asthma's been fine, so we're making progress. What we did is basically, because we're kind of flying solo here, the landlord doesn't want us to do anything ourselves, but we also need a habitable place to live for at least a few months until we can find another place or the tenancy's up. So we're just kind of learning on the go, I would say. What seems to have helped is discovering that there was mold behind the wall, and detection method was shining a little torch in, seeing, oh wait, so there's no visible mold on any of the walls now, but we shined a light behind. It's like a little recessed door for the ensuite, and we shined a torch in there, and there was all this green stuff. So we got imaginative and squirted in some mold. We also cleaned out we had the air conditioner professionally cleaned. There was lots of mold in that. Basically, and then behind the door we seal it up with masking tape. These steps are what seems to have taken the place from triggering my asthma to now at least I can sleep here peacefully, which is huge, because it gives you it gives you your basic comfort back. There is still a lingering smell of mold. It's slight, but that tells me that there's still something that we're not seeing or that's going on. So Herman and Corin, I don't yet have the ability to send you a picture of the room. It's a small bedroom. It's about maybe 4 meters by 3 meters, and the walls are, I think, drywall basically. I know the gold standard would be things like, removal, right, of materials, like just scraping it down, taking it down. But I don't think we can do that. We're just trying to use the least destructive methods possible. It's more about survival at the moment than it is about doing this properly, because we're just trying to get out of this place as soon as we can. But to get us to the last level there of there's this lingering smell, we can't see anything physically, but it's reasonable to assume that we're not imagining. It's for sure something. There was weeks of water intrusion. Would putting down anti-mold spray on the walls, like to leave it kind of saturate into the surfaces, would that be an option, or what would you recommend for the last stage of this remediation process? Over to you two.
Hey everyone, welcome back to My Weird Prompts. I am Corn, and I am joined as always by my brother,
Herman Poppleberry, reporting for duty.
We have a bit of a localized situation today. Our housemate Daniel sent us a voice note about a problem he is dealing with right here in the house, or, well, specifically in his bedroom. It is something I think a lot of people deal with, especially in older buildings or places with a bit of a history of leaks.
The dreaded mold. It is the silent roommate that nobody asked for.
Exactly. So, Daniel has been dealing with this roof leak saga since last year. He has done a lot of the initial heavy lifting. He got the leak fixed, he had the air conditioner professionally cleaned, and he even found some hidden mold behind a recessed door and treated it. But the kicker is that there is still a lingering smell. He is looking for a non-destructive way to finish the job because he is planning on moving out soon and does not want to start tearing down walls if he can avoid it.
It is a classic dilemma. You have handled the visible enemy, but the phantom remains. That musty, earthy scent that just tells your brain something is not right.
His specific question was about applying an anti-mold spray to the drywall and essentially letting it saturate the surface to see if that knocks it out. I want to dive into that. But first, Herman, why does mold smell even when you cannot see it? What are we actually smelling?
That is a great place to start because the smell is actually a very specific biological signal. What we call a moldy smell is usually caused by microbial volatile organic compounds, or MVOCs. These are essentially gases produced by mold as it grows and digests its food source. In Daniel's case, that food source is likely the paper backing of the drywall or the dust and organic matter inside the wall cavity.
So even if the surface looks clean, the off-gassing is still happening somewhere.
Right, and here is the thing about MVOCs. They are extremely small. We are talking about molecules that can permeate through materials that spores themselves cannot. This is why you can smell mold through a wall. The mold might be trapped on the backside of the drywall, but those chemical byproducts are drifting right through the pores of the material into the room.
That brings us to Daniel's idea. He wants to take an anti-mold spray and really let it soak into the drywall. On the surface, it sounds logical. If the mold is in the wall, send the poison into the wall. But I have a feeling you have some thoughts on why saturating drywall might be a double-edged sword.
Oh, it is definitely a risky move. Drywall is essentially a gypsum sandwich. You have 2 layers of heavy paper with a core of gypsum plaster. That paper is basically a 5-star buffet for mold. If you take a liquid spray and saturate the drywall, you are introducing moisture back into a system that you have been trying to dry out.
And isn't it true that most common sprays, like bleach, are actually counterproductive on porous surfaces?
Absolutely. Bleach is about 90% water. When you spray it on drywall, the chlorine stays on the surface, but the water soaks deep into the paper and gypsum. You are literally watering the mold.
So you might accidentally feed the beast while trying to kill it.
Exactly. If the spray does not penetrate deeply enough to kill every single hyphae, which are the root-like structures of the mold, you've just given the survivors a fresh drink of water. Plus, drywall loses its structural integrity when it gets too wet. You could end up with sagging or crumbling walls before you even move out.
Okay, so if saturation is out, or at least highly risky, what is the alternative? Daniel mentioned he's looking for non-destructive methods. Is there a way to treat the hidden mold without a sledgehammer?
There are a few specialized tools for this. One of the most effective non-destructive methods for lingering smells and hidden spores is something called a cold fogger, or a ULV fogger. ULV stands for ultra-low volume.
I have seen those. They look like little leaf blowers that put out a fine mist, right?
Exactly. Instead of a spray bottle that puts out large droplets that sit on the surface, a fogger atomizes the antimicrobial solution into tiny particles, usually between 5 and 20 microns. These particles are so small, they behave almost like a gas. They stay suspended in the air longer and can drift into the same tiny cracks and pores where the MVOCs are coming from.
So instead of soaking the wall, you are essentially filling the room with a medicated fog that can reach where a spray cannot.
Precisely. There are specific products, like those containing ammonium cations or even natural ones based on thyme oil, that are designed for this. One brand that is often recommended in these scenarios is concrobium. It works by essentially crushing the mold spores as it dries rather than just poisoning them. It leaves a thin, invisible antimicrobial shield on the surface.
That sounds like a much better approach than trying to turn the drywall into a sponge. But what about the air itself? If Daniel is still smelling it, even after fogging, does that mean there is a reservoir of spores somewhere he missed?
It is very likely. He mentioned the air conditioner was cleaned, which is huge, because those are often the primary culprit for circulating smells. But mold can hide in the most frustrating places. Think about the carpet if there is one, the padding underneath, or even the backside of furniture that was near the leak.
He also mentioned he found mold behind a recessed door and taped it up with masking tape. That jumped out at me. Is masking tape really an effective barrier for mold?
Honestly, probably not in the long term. Masking tape is paper-based and the adhesive is not airtight. If there is active mold growth behind that door, it is still breathing. It is still producing those volatile compounds we talked about. Taping it might stop some physical spores from blowing out, but the smell will leak through the tape itself.
So that might be the source of the lingering scent. It is like trying to stop a perfume smell by putting a paper bag over the bottle.
That is a perfect analogy. If he wants to seal that area without destroying anything, he might want to look into a more robust sealant or even a plastic vapor barrier that is taped down with high-quality foil tape or something non-porous. But ideally, that area needs to be treated, not just hidden.
Let us talk about the air quality side of things. If he is staying there for a few more months and wants to ensure he is not breathing in anything harmful, especially since he mentioned having asthma, what should he be looking for in terms of air filtration?
For someone with asthma, this is critical. Standard air filters will not touch the smell. They might catch the spores, which are relatively large, but they will not catch the MVOCs. For the smell, you need activated carbon.
Right, because carbon works through adsorption, where the gas molecules actually stick to the surface of the carbon.
Exactly. Most consumer-grade air purifiers have a very thin carbon sheet that looks like a piece of felt. That will last about 2 days in a moldy room before it is saturated. Daniel would need something with a deep bed of pelletized carbon. We are talking several pounds of carbon, like what you find in an Austin Air or an IQ Air unit.
That is a significant investment, but if it protects his health, it is probably worth it. What about HEPA filters?
HEPA is non-negotiable for the spores themselves. A true HEPA filter will catch 99.97% of particles down to 0.3 microns. Mold spores are typically between 3 and 40 microns, so a good HEPA filter will absolutely scrub the physical spores out of the air. If he runs a high-quality HEPA filter with a significant carbon stage, his asthma symptoms should improve significantly.
I want to go back to the source for a second. Daniel mentioned the roof leak was fixed. In your research, Herman, how long does it take for a wall cavity to truly dry out after a leak? Is it possible the smell is still there simply because the inside of the wall is still damp?
That is a very astute point, Korn. People often think that once the water stops coming in, the problem is over. But a wall cavity is a closed environment with very little airflow. If that gypsum core got soaked, it can hold on to moisture for weeks or even months if it is not actively dried.
And as long as it is damp, the mold will stay active.
Exactly. One thing Daniel could do without tearing down the wall is to use a moisture meter. You can get pinless ones that you just press against the wall. If the meter shows high moisture levels deep in the drywall, then all the sprays and foggers in the world are just temporary bandages. He would need to get a dehumidifier in that room and run it aggressively to pull the moisture out through the pores of the drywall.
That feels like a very practical, non-destructive step. Check the moisture levels first. If it is still wet, dry it. If it is dry and still smells, then you move to the fogging and air scrubbing.
Precisely. And I want to mention one more thing that people often overlook: the dust in the room.
The dust? How does that factor in?
Mold spores are heavy compared to many other indoor pollutants. They tend to settle on horizontal surfaces and mix with house dust. If Daniel had a major mold bloom, there are likely millions of spores sitting in the dust on top of his wardrobe, under his bed, and in his curtains. Every time he walks across the room or opens a window, he is kicking those spores back into the air.
So a deep clean of the entire room is necessary, not just the walls.
Absolutely. We are talking about HEPA vacuuming every single surface, not just the floor, but the walls, the ceiling, the tops of door frames, and then wiping down hard surfaces with an antimicrobial solution. For the curtains and bedding, a hot wash with a bit of borax can do wonders.
You know, it is interesting. Daniel's situation reminds me of some of the things we talked about in our very early episodes. I think it was back in episode 12 or 13, where we discussed the hidden ecosystems in our homes. We often think of our houses as static boxes, but they are really these complex, breathing environments where moisture and biology are constantly interacting.
I remember that one. We talked about how a house is basically a laboratory for whatever we allow to grow in it, and mold is one of the most successful organisms on the planet because it is so incredibly patient. It can sit dormant for years, and then, the moment a roof leak happens, it is back in business.
Let us touch on the air conditioner again. Daniel had it professionally cleaned, which is great. But in your experience, Herman, can mold survive a professional cleaning if it has gotten deep into the internal insulation of the unit?
It can. Many older split system units have a type of internal insulation that is basically a foam or a felt material. If mold gets into that, a standard chemical spray on the coils might not reach it. If the smell seems to get stronger when the AC is running, that is a huge red flag that the unit itself is still a source.
If that is the case, what can he do?
Sometimes you can use an AC-specific disinfectant foam that you spray into the intake while the fan is running. It pulls the foam deep into the nooks and crannies. But if the insulation is truly infested, sometimes the only non-destructive option is to keep the unit as dry as possible. Most modern units have a dry mode or a fan-only mode that helps prevent condensation from sitting on the coils after use.
That is a good tip for prevention. Now, let us look at the timeline. Daniel is moving out soon. He wants a solution that works quickly. If he does the moisture check, finds it is dry, and then does a fogging treatment and a deep HEPA clean, how long should it take for that smell to dissipate?
If the source is truly addressed, the smell should start to fade within 48 to 72 hours. MVOCs are volatile, meaning they want to evaporate and move out. If he can combine the treatment with some good old-fashioned ventilation, opening the windows and getting a cross breeze, it will clear out much faster.
But what if it doesn't? What is the next step if the smell persists after all that?
Then we have to face the reality that there is likely a significant colony of mold inside the wall cavity that is too large to be neutralized from the outside. In that case, the non-destructive path has reached its end.
That is the hard truth. Sometimes the only way to fix a mold problem is to remove the affected material.
It is. And for a renter like Daniel, that is a conversation for the landlord. But at least if he has done these other steps, he can say with confidence, I have dried it, I have fogged it, I have cleaned it, and the smell is still here. That is strong evidence that the problem is structural.
Let us talk about the health aspect for a second. Daniel mentioned his asthma. We are not doctors, obviously, but from a technical perspective, what are the specific components of mold that trigger respiratory issues? Is it just the spores?
It is actually a combination. You have the spores themselves, which are physical irritants. Then you have fragments of the mold, which can be even smaller than spores and can travel deeper into the lungs. And then you have mycotoxins, which are toxic chemicals produced by certain types of mold, like Stachybotrys, often called black mold.
Those are the ones people really worry about.
Right. Mycotoxins are not always present, but when they are, they can cause a range of issues from headaches and fatigue to severe respiratory distress. This is why the smell is such a good warning system. Your body is essentially telling you that there is a high concentration of microbial activity in your space.
It is fascinating how our sense of smell is tuned to detect these things. It is an evolutionary survival mechanism.
It really is. We are hardwired to find the smell of decay and mold repulsive because, for most of human history, those things meant danger, whether it was spoiled food or an unsafe shelter.
So, to summarize for Daniel and anyone else in this position, first, don't saturate your drywall with spray. It is likely to cause more harm than good by introducing moisture and potentially damaging the wall.
Exactly. Step 1. Get a moisture meter. Ensure the wall is actually dry. If it is over 15 or 16% moisture content, you need a dehumidifier.
Step 2. Look into a ULV fogger with a professional-grade antimicrobial like Concrobium. This will reach the pores and cracks without soaking the material.
Step 3. A deep HEPA clean. Vacuum everything, wipe everything, and wash all fabrics.
Step 4. Manage the air quality with a HEPA, an activated carbon filter. Make sure the carbon is substantial, not just a thin sheet.
And step 5, address the seals. If you have an area like that recessed door, don't just use masking tape. Use a proper vapor barrier if you are trying to contain a smell.
This feels like a very solid, systematic approach. It is respectful of the fact that he's a renter and doesn't want to do a full renovation, but it also takes his health seriously.
I think it is the best way to go. It is about working with the physics of the room rather than just fighting the biology.
You know, I was reading a paper recently about the use of ozone generators for mold smells. I know those are controversial. What is your take on that as a non-destructive option?
Ozone is a powerful oxidizer. It can absolutely destroy MVOCs and kill surface mold. But, and this is a big but, it is also dangerous to humans, pets, and even plants. You cannot be in the room while it is running.
And doesn't it have some weird side effects on materials?
It does. Ozone can degrade natural rubber, certain plastics, and even the elastic in your clothes if the concentration is high enough. Plus, it can react with other chemicals in the house to create new, potentially harmful compounds like formaldehyde. For a single bedroom in a shared house, I would generally advise against it unless it is done by a professional with proper clearing protocols.
That makes sense. It feels like a bit of a nuclear option when a more targeted approach might work.
Exactly. Fogging is much safer and often more effective for long-term prevention because it leaves a residue that prevents new spores from taking hold. Ozone is a one-and-done treatment. The moment it dissipates, the protection is gone.
This has been a really deep dive into something that seems simple on the surface, but is actually quite complex. It is all about the hidden interactions between moisture, materials, and biology.
It really is. And I have to say, I am glad Daniel is taking this seriously. A lot of people just ignore a musty smell, but when you have asthma, that is not an option. Your home should be your sanctuary, not something that makes you sick.
Absolutely. And it is a good reminder for all of us to keep an eye on those roof leaks. A small drip today can be a massive mold headache 6 months from now.
Or a 3,000-word podcast episode.
Ha, true. But hopefully, an episode that helps people navigate these situations. Before we wrap up, I want to mention that we have been doing this for a long time now. This is actually episode 491.
Wow. We have talked about a lot of weird prompts in that time.
We really have. If you are new to the show, or if you are looking for more episodes like this one, you can head over to myweirdprompts.com. We have a full archive there, and you can search for topics that interest you. We have covered everything from the physics of sound to the ethics of artificial intelligence.
And if you have a weird prompt of your own, there is a contact form on the website. We love hearing from listeners, and you never know, your question might be the focus of a future episode.
Also, if you are enjoying the show, we would really appreciate it if you could leave us a review on your podcast app or on Spotify. It genuinely helps other people find the show, and we love reading your feedback.
It really does make a difference. We are a small, independent operation, and word of mouth is everything for us.
So, thank you to Daniel for sending in this prompt. It was a great excuse to dig into the science of mold and home maintenance. I hope your room gets back to normal soon, man.
Yeah, good luck with the remediation, Daniel. And remember, keep it dry.
Thanks for listening to My Weird Prompts. I am Corn.
And I am Herman Poppleberry.
We will see you in the next episode.
Until next time.
You know, Herman, I was thinking about that recessed door again. If he really wants to be sure about what's going on back there, do you think one of those borescope cameras would be useful? The ones you can stick through a tiny hole?
Oh, absolutely. You can get those for $20 or $30 now. They usually connect right to your smartphone. You just drill a tiny 1/4-inch hole in the drywall, snake the camera in, and you can see exactly what the backside of the wall looks like.
That is a great non-destructive way to get some peace of mind. If it's clean back there, the smell is likely just in the room's dust or the AC. If it's covered in green fuzz, well, then you know you've got a bigger job on your hands.
Exactly. Information is power in these situations. The more you know about what is actually happening inside those walls, the better decisions you can make.
It is like being a detective, but for fungi.
My favorite kind of detective work.
All right. We really are going this time. Thanks again, everyone.
Bye for now.
One last thing, actually. I was thinking about the humidity levels in Jerusalem. It has been a pretty damp winter. Do you think that is playing a big role in why the smell is lingering?
Oh, for sure. When the outdoor humidity is high, it is much harder for indoor materials to release their moisture. If the air in the room is already at 60 or 70% humidity, that damp drywall has nowhere to put its water.
So a dehumidifier isn't just a suggestion. It's almost a requirement in this climate during the winter.
I would say so, especially in these stone buildings that tend to hold the cold and create condensation on the interior walls. It is a perfect storm for mold.
Good point. Okay, now we are officially signing off.
For real this time.
Take care, everyone.
See ya.
Actually, Herman, I just remembered something else. Did you ever read that study about certain indoor plants that can actually help filter out MVOCs?
I have. Things like spider plants and peace lilies. They are not a total solution for a major mold problem, but they can definitely help scrub some of those volatile compounds out of the air. Just keep in mind, you'd need a lot of them to equal one good carbon filter.
Maybe Daniel should get a few plants for his room once he gets the mold under control. A bit of a biological cleanup crew.
It couldn't hurt. Plus, they make the room look much nicer than masking tape and foggers.
True. All right, that is the final word.
We'll see.
No, really. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox Turbo.
Thanks for listening to another episode of My Weird Prompts, an AI-generated podcast featuring Daniel Rosehill's AI prompts, as answered by a revolving cast of friendly AI characters including me, Cornelius the Sloth. Subscribe on Spotify or visit myweirdprompts.com.